Humans are inherently social beings. From the earliest days of our existence, we've thrived in groups, relying on each other for survival, comfort, and growth. But what happens when those connections are severed? In this video, we'll explore the profound effects isolation can have on the brain. We'll look at the science behind loneliness, the changes it triggers in our minds, and why maintaining social bonds is so crucial for our mental health. Let's begin by understanding what isolation really means in the context of our daily lives. Isolation isn't just about being physically alone. It's the absence of meaningful social interaction even if you're surrounded by people. This can happen to anyone, students away from home, remote workers, or even those in crowded cities. The key factor is the lack of genuine connection. When we feel isolated, our brains interpret this as a form of social pain, which can be as real and impactful as physical pain. Understanding this distinction is the first step in recognizing how isolation can affect us. Brains are wired for social interaction. Specific regions like the prefrontal cortex and limbic system are dedicated to processing social cues and managing relationships. When these areas are understimulated due to isolation, they can begin to function differently. This shift can lead to changes in how we perceive ourselves and others, sometimes making it harder to reconnect even when opportunities arise. The brain's social wiring is a key reason why isolation has such a profound impact. When we experience isolation, our bodies can enter a state of heightened stress. The brain perceives social separation as a threat, activating the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal 8PA axis. This leads to the release of stress hormones like cortisol. Over time, chronic exposure to these hormones can negatively affect brain structure and function, especially in areas related to memory and emotional regulation. This is why prolonged isolation often feels exhausting and overwhelming. One of the most striking effects of chronic isolation is the shrinking of the hippocampus, the brain region responsible for memory and learning. Studies have shown that people who experience long-term loneliness often have reduced hippocampal volume. This can make it harder to form new memories or recall old ones, contributing to feelings of confusion and forgetfulness. The hippocampus is highly sensitive to stress, which explains why isolation can have such a dramatic effect. Isolation doesn't just affect memory, it also disrupts our ability to regulate emotions. The amygdala, a region involved in processing fear and anxiety, becomes more reactive when we're lonely. This heightened sensitivity can make us feel more anxious, irritable, or even depressed. Over time, it becomes harder to manage these emotions, leading to a cycle where isolation breeds more negative feelings, which in turn make it harder to reach out to others. When we're isolated, our brains can struggle with decision-making. The prefrontal cortex, which helps us plan, focus, and make choices, is less active during periods of loneliness. This can lead to indecisiveness, poor judgment, and difficulty concentrating. These cognitive changes can make everyday tasks feel overwhelming, further deepening the sense of isolation and helplessness. Isolation can also wreak havoc on our sleep patterns. Without regular social cues and routines, our circadian rhythms can become disrupted. This often leads to insomnia or restless sleep, which in turn affects mood, memory, and overall brain health. Poor sleep can make it even harder to cope with the emotional and cognitive challenges of isolation, creating a vicious cycle. Interestingly, the brain processes social pain in much the same way as physical pain. When we feel rejected or isolated, the anterior cingulate cortex becomes active, just as it does when we experience a physical injury. This overlap explains why loneliness can feel so deeply uncomfortable and why it's so important to address social pain, not just physical pain. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to adapt and change. Isolation can reduce this flexibility, making it harder for the brain to form new connections or recover from injury. This means that the longer we remain isolated, the more difficult it becomes to bounce back, both mentally and emotionally. Staying socially engaged helps keep our brains adaptable and resilient. Isolation is a significant risk factor for depression. The changes in brain chemistry and structure caused by loneliness can lead to persistent feelings of sadness, hopelessness, and a lack of motivation. Depression, in turn, can make it even harder to seek out social connections, creating a downward spiral that's difficult to escape without support. When we're isolated, our brains can become hypervigilant, constantly scanning for threats. This heightened state of alertness is a survival mechanism, but it can lead to chronic anxiety. Over time, this can exhaust our mental resources, making it harder to relax or feel safe, even in familiar environments. Isolation doesn't just affect the brain, it also impacts the body. Chronic loneliness can weaken the immune system, making us more susceptible to illness. This is partly due to the stress response, which diverts resources away from immune function. Over time, this can lead to more frequent infections and slower recovery from illness. Long-term isolation is linked to cognitive decline, especially in older adults. Without regular mental stimulation from social interaction, the brain's processing speed and memory can deteriorate. This increases the risk of conditions like dementia and Alzheimer's disease. Staying connected is one of the best ways to keep the mind sharp as we age. Just like muscles, social skills can weaken with lack of use. When we're isolated, we have fewer opportunities to practice communication, empathy, and conflict resolution. Over time, this can make social situations feel more intimidating, reinforcing the cycle of loneliness. Isolation can distort how we see ourselves. Without feedback from others, it's easy to fall into negative thought patterns, believing we're less likable or capable than we really are. This can erode self-esteem and make it even harder to reach out for support. When we're isolated, we often become more sensitive to signs of rejection or exclusion. The brain's threat detection systems are on high alert, making us more likely to interpret neutral interactions as negative. This heightened sensitivity can make socializing feel risky, discouraging us from trying to reconnect. The effects of isolation aren't limited to the mind. Chronic loneliness is associated with higher risks of heart disease, high blood pressure, and even premature death. The stress and inflammation caused by isolation can take a toll on nearly every system in the body, highlighting the importance of social connection for overall health. Technology can be a double-edged sword when it comes to isolation. While social media and messaging apps can help us stay connected, they can also contribute to feelings of loneliness if interactions lack depth or authenticity. It's important to use technology mindfully, focusing on meaningful connections rather than just increasing screen time. Despite living in a highly connected world, many people feel more isolated than ever. Urbanization, remote work, and changing family structures can all contribute to a sense of disconnection. Recognizing these societal trends is the first step toward addressing the growing problem of loneliness. Certain groups are more vulnerable to the effects of isolation, including the elderly, people with disabilities, and those living in remote areas. These populations may face additional barriers to social connection, making targeted support and community programs especially important. The COVID-19 pandemic brought isolation to the forefront, with lockdowns and social distancing measures affecting millions worldwide. The mental health consequences have been significant, highlighting just how essential social interaction is for our well-being. Many are still coping with the aftereffects today. The good news is that the effects of isolation aren't permanent. Reaching out, even in small ways, can begin to reverse the changes in the brain. Simple acts like calling a friend, joining a group, or volunteering can help rebuild social connections and restore mental health. Establishing a daily routine can help combat the effects of isolation. Regular activities provide structure, reduce stress, and create opportunities for social interaction. Whether it's a morning walk, a hobby, or scheduled calls with loved ones, routines can anchor us and support brain health. Practicing mindfulness and self-compassion can help manage the emotional toll of isolation. Techniques like meditation, journaling, or simply acknowledging your feelings can reduce stress and improve emotional regulation. Being kind to yourself is an important step toward healing. If feelings of isolation persist, seeking professional help can make a big difference. Therapists and counselors are trained to help people navigate loneliness and rebuild social connections. There's no shame in reaching out for support. It's a sign of strength and self-care. Communities play a vital role in combating isolation. Whether it's a neighborhood group, a club, or an online forum, being part of a community provides a sense of belonging and purpose. These connections can buffer against the negative effects of loneliness and support overall well-being. Even brief social interactions can have a positive impact on the brain. A smile from a stranger, a quick chat with a neighbor, or a friendly message can boost mood and reduce feelings of isolation. These small moments add up, reminding us that we're not alone. Investing time and energy in relationships is one of the best ways to protect your brain from the effects of isolation. Regular communication, shared activities, and emotional support all help strengthen social bonds and promote mental health. It's never too late to reconnect. While isolation can have serious effects on the brain, it's important to remember that healing is possible. By understanding the science behind loneliness and taking proactive steps to connect with others, we can protect our mental health and support those around us. Together, we can break the cycle of isolation and build a more connected, resilient world.